what's your secret? You got the kind of vibe that leaves men speechless. It could be model multitasking genius. Yeah, you got it all.
Welcome back to Breakthrough Conversations with Rhoda and Company. So today's conversation, it shines a light on something that impacts millions of women, but is rarely discussed openly. And it's the invisible costs that women pay throughout their careers. And these are the costs that don't appear on a paycheck or performance review. The cost of balancing work and caregiving, the cost of navigating workplaces that weren't designed with every life stage in mind, the cost of masking differences, carrying invisible responsibilities, and redefining success as life evolves. So, my guest today is Leslie Tolliver. Welcome, Leslie. I'm so excited to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super
You're so
excited.
welcome. Thanks for saying yes. Leslie is an attorney, a municipal HR leader, a keynote speaker, an executive coach, an advocate for healthier, more inclusive workplaces. And Leslie also brings this unique perspective that's shaped by her work in labor relations and organizational culture and leadership development and public sector transformation. She is also very passionate about advocating for neurodiversity in the workplace and believes organizations perform better when they embrace different ways of thinking, communicating, and contributing. I agree. And perhaps most importantly for today's conversation, Leslie brings both professional expertise and live experience as a leader, a mother of four, a woman navigating the realities of work, caregiving, identity, and growth. So today we are discussing the hidden trade offs that women often make throughout their careers and why neurodiversity matters and what organizations are getting wrong and how women can redefine success on their own terms. And our episode is titled By Intention: The Invisible Costs Women Pay at Work, the Hidden Trade-Offs Behind Success, Caregiving, and Career Growth. Leslie, again, welcome to Breakthrough Conversations.
Thanks so much, Rhoda, for having me. I'm so excited. And before we got started, you talked about how this was the bomb.com. I am
Yeah.
excited. So let's get to it.
Yeah. So you describe yourself as an HR leader, an attorney, an executive coach, a mom of four, a neurodivergent thinker. Which of those identities has shaped you the most as a leader?
I would probably say by identification as a mother as well as a neurodiverse thinker. I think those two things have allowed me to open my ears to empathy, right?
Mhm.
Knowing and understanding that we all bring ourselves to work. There's organizations that talk about bring your whole self to work. Well, we do every day. We may
Right.
not openly discuss what that looks like, right? But
Mhm.
to have that empathetic lens to be able to look at a person and say, hey, I don't know what's going on under the scenes, between the ears, behind
Right.
the backdrop, right? And so that has empowered me to be a more empathetic listener and leader.
That's awesome because we all are here living life. And
Mm-hmm.
so the least we can do is empathize with others.
Mm-hmm.
That
Mm-hmm.
is so profound that you have the self awareness to do that because some people don't
Mm-hmm.
in
Yeah.
leadership roles. And that's unfortunate and sad.
Mhm. I think oftentimes careers become individuals' identities, and that's
Mm,
really not how it's supposed to work, right?
mm,
And so, thank you so much for that great introduction. What it didn't say is for
mm.
most of my children's lives, I've been a single mother, right? And so that is a
Wow.
whole nother layer
Yeah.
of things that come to light, right? And so, with that, we live
Mhm.
in a place that's not designed for parenthood or for that
Right.
matter single parenthood, right?
No.
So the kids don't get dropped off to 8:40, but the expectation is for me to be at my desk at 8:30. Or there's a
Yeah.
pick up at 3:20, but I'm supposed to be at my desk until 5:30, right?
Right.
I think during the COVID time, what really shed light on just the workforce was
Hmm.
there's so much that can be done remotely, and
Right.
there's so much that can be done in less than 8 hours.
Yes.
If
Yeah.
we're being
You were
real
real
about it.
about it. Hmm.
Right. And to change that thinking of rather particularly salaried employees, you're paying me for my time at a desk
Right.
versus paying me for my knowledge is what you're
Right.
really paying me for. And
Yeah.
so if my neurodiversity or brilliance or anything else allows me to complete a task or several tasks in 4 hours, and also be there for my family, then what are we really talking about?
Right. That is so true. And this old mindset of you must be present. If you're not present, you're not performing.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, I've seen a lot of people very present.
Mm-hmm.
They're early and late and
Mm-hmm.
still not performing. So that is not the barometer that we should be using. That's a great point to challenge organizational thinking about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. You talk about the invisible costs women pay at work. What do you mean by that? And why do you think we don't talk about it more openly?
Well, I think that, there was this big push for equality, right? And,
Mhm.
I am woman, here we roar. I can do just as much as my counterpart who happens to be a male. And I don't disagree because I think that, I have done some outstanding things myself. But the fact of the matter is that is also cloaked in this cape of traditionalism, right? And so traditionally it is the one parent, ideally usually the female, that takes on the brunt of taking care of the children, right? And so I mentioned about how at a very early age of my children that I was a single mother. So in going back into the workforce, not to mention I've been home for about 5 years, right? With them, right? So there's a place where I'm not earning income at all. And then the relationship parted, and so then now I'm on my own, but I've got little kids, and so the cost of daycare, right?
Yes.
And you compare that to working every day. What are you really working for but for the daycare check? And so that caused me, I took a part-time job. Well, part-time, most times you don't have to earn time off, you don't have benefits, you don't, the pay may be hourly and you're not making as much because now you may be working 20 hours a week versus 40 hours a week, right? And then I was able to work my way up, and I found a great position within the education system, which allowed me to have a very similar calendar now to my kiddos, with the exception of the summertime months because I was a 12-month employee. And then, the C word came along, COVID. And so we were allowed to work from home for a while, but then at some point, I was going to have to go back. Well, my youngest at that point was in second grade, and Zoom just terrified her, right? And so then I took a remote job at home to kind of move and maneuver through those waters. Well, now I was invested at this organization because they hadn't made the time, so there's the potential for a retirement check, right? And so many things. And so I have, in a lot of ways, had to design my professional life around what my home life looks like.
Right. And you've had to personally do it versus the systemic way that our workforce is set up, at least in the US. It's not designed for the caregiver.
No.
It's not designed because the caregiver, quite frankly, is more women, but it can be men too. It's not designed for that parent. And that light bulb moment that when you were talking, that's what I was thinking about, how dated the way the workplace and the way we work is.
Yeah.
But we are taking leaps and bounds in technology, AI, and healthcare, and the way we deliver on healthcare, but nobody's looking at the structure of how we work.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And so that now puts you behind, in terms of when you're working. And so now my great plan is my last one graduates high school at 54. I will be 54 at that time. Well, then I have 3 in college at that point, right?
Yes.
And so now I'm working the last 10, 15 years of my professional career. And the check now looks like a third, a third, a third. A third towards retirement, a third towards living, and then a third to however many colleges I got to save money to. Right? And so it is a sacrifice that I don't think anyone ever really thinks about. I can remember as a teenage girl of wanting a large family, but there's this Bible verse that talks about counting the cost. And I don't know that we really make account for the sacrifice for any parent, male or female, right? And particularly if you want to do a good job, right? Of what that looks like.
And no wonder that this new younger generation that's coming up, they're not producing as many kids and being as fruitful because they've watched their parents make that sacrifice. And they're saying, hey, I want I want a balanced life and I want more freedom and I want to be able to travel when I can travel.
Mhm,
So
mhm,
they're choosing the career part or whatever, whether it's entrepreneurship or whatever, but they're
mhm.
not choosing the families.
Yeah.
And the birth rates show that. And one of the reasons I know our system, the government is trying to promote people to have more
Mhm.
kids, but they're not looking at the work system and
Yes.
structure as
Yes.
one of the root causes of why people aren't.
Yeah.
I hope that they listening to us today.
I hope so too. I absolutely, because we can lead the charge for sure.
Right. And you
Yeah.
talked about these sacrifices, but as a not only a working mom, but a single working mom, and you talked about the costs, but what are some of the hidden, you mentioned about the cost of daycare in college, hidden financial or emotional, or
Mhm.
even career costs, because I think it's used against us when we're not there late,
Mhm.
when we aren't at the happy hour,
Mhm.
uh, that the
Mhm.
groups are having the conversations around. What are your thoughts around that?
I think you're absolutely correct, right? Because we're looking for flexibility so you can get home and do whatever you may need to
Mhm.
do for the little ones, right? And so, yeah, I think you do miss out on those important conversations. I don't have 4 hours to step aside and make that deal on the golf
Right,
course, you know, a lot
right,
of times with those. And then the emotional labor and the emotional tax, right?
right.
Just from, so I'm required to keep up and learn my skill set that I need for my job, right? And remember
Mhm.
whatever project is coming up, whatever
Right.
meeting that I have on my plate, but I'm also on the back of my mind or within my planner thinking about this sports practice, this drop off, this pickup,
Mhm.
this grocery list, this
Right.
grocery drop off and pickup, making sure that even in my absence that there is plenty there at the house to be
Yeah.
prepared, right? Or how many dental appointments I need to schedule, how many
Mhm.
doctor's appointments I need to schedule. Can I schedule them in a cluster?
Right.
Just at the end of the day, particularly if you are neurodivergent, right?
Yeah.
It is like having 47 tabs open on a computer all at the same time.
Right.
And
Right.
so you are working twice as hard.
Mhm.
And so at the end of the day, you're just exhausted and
Yeah.
emotionally spent.
And despite everything you just named that you do and
Mhm,
that you're called upon for, you still find time to give back to the community. You
mhm,
have women's breakfast meetings.
mhm,
You're mentoring other women. You're
mhm.
just this superwoman. And I pray that you get everything that you're given, that you get it back 100-fold return.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I started some of the communities that I started is just for that, to have
Yeah.
community.
Mhm.
Oftentimes, you're in parenthood or building a career with your head down, and
Right.
you look up and 20 years have passed,
Yeah.
and that labor of love now has hopefully, left the nest. And I never wanted to wake up and feel like the bottom had dropped.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're like, now what? And so I have been very intentional about not only growing them, but
Mhm.
trying to grow and create a community for myself.
Yeah.
For that very reason, and also to continue to learn and grow. You
Mhm.
mentioned the women's networking breakfast.
Yeah.
I mean, I get just as much from you guys as I'm hope that you get from me.
Yeah.
I an idea that I didn't think of, a way to make something easier, or even
Right.
just, a facial routine that I hadn't tried yet.
Right. Right. Yeah, they're a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And I know you're very passionate about neurodiversity.
Mhm.
And what are leaders still misunderstanding about neurodivergent talent?
Well, I think neurodiversity is still a relatively young term. It's only about
Mhm.
20 years old, right?
Right.
And then when you think about the generations that we have in the workforce, we've got about 6 generations
Mhm.
collectively across the workforce, which has a different style and a different frame of mind and thinking. So when
Yeah.
I think of my parents who were boomers, it was kind of you go to work, you put your head down, you ask no questions, right? You do
Mhm.
exactly as you're told. Well, as the generations have progressed, there is more emotional intelligence,
Mhm.
more identifies being neurodiverse. In fact, generation after me, so that's millennial and alpha,
Mhm.
about 60% identifies neurodiverse, right?
Wow.
And so with that, it's time that but we still have the more seasoned generation that are
Mhm.
leading the organizations, right?
Right.
And so it is time to do away with it. We've always done it this way type of
Mhm.
mentality
Mhm.
and really listen. And I think
Mhm.
leadership has been reluctant to listen because of that very
Right.
framework of this is the way we've always done it and this is
Right.
how it should be. But there is so much brilliance out there to be seen and heard.
Mhm.
I was late diagnosed, and it
Uh-huh.
was at unfortunately at a place of employment where I was diagnosed, but it really helped me down this road. And then it helped me be more self-aware about my children. So I speak about this and train and talk about it, not only because I don't want an employee to experience what I did, and I don't want a manager to be in a situation and not know what to do about it, right? And then finally, my kids will come to work for you someday.
Right. That is so true.
Yeah.
I took a DEI certification through Cornell University, and one of the courses I specifically remember was a neurodivergent course that I took. And I remember specifically them giving examples of how companies like JP Morgan have embraced this. And what they did was revamp their job postings. So instead of them reading overly complicated, they revamped those, simplified the language, they simplified the application process. They simplified and condensed and streamlined the interview process instead of having to go through 19 interviews and meet with all these different people, which can be overwhelming for anyone. They did away with that and simplified it. They assign coaches, neurodiversity coaches, to leaders that train them how to lead neurodivergent talent. It was so fascinating to me. And I was like, but we all benefit from, like, I would benefit from, I haven't been diagnosed as neurodivergent, but anybody would benefit from you simplifying all those things and leaders being more effective in learning how to meet people where they are. Everybody benefits.
Yeah, I completely agree. But I also think that there probably was also a way to weed out the candidates that they felt like weren't a cultural fit. And I cringe when I hear the word cultural fit, because here's the thing: if they are a fit, then everyone sitting at that round table look alike, think alike, acting like, have the very same ideas. When in fact, when you diversify that table in terms of thinking and everything else that comes up, in mind when you think of diversity, you're more efficient. You come up with answers that you may not have thought about before. It improves the bottom line. And so there is advantages for it. And so it's also, getting outside of that box of thinking, not only this is the way we've always done it, but everybody else kind of looks and acts and thinks like me, so this must be great. And in reality, it's not.
It's not. And I think that that whole culture fit or fit is coded language. It's fraught with bias. So I mentioned some of the things that I learned on what organizations like JP Morgan have done. Do you have any other thoughts around practical ways that organizations can create more neuro-inclusive workplaces without making it complicated?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there are lots of ways. I'll just use myself for example. And I think that let me be clear, if you identify as being neurodivergent and understand it, I think the onus and responsibility lies both with the employee and the employer, right? And so for me, as the example is, I know and understand that writing down stuff is best for me so I don't forget it, right? And so I carry a journal in every meeting. I am very well aware that after 20 minutes, I probably have a song in my head and planning dinner, right? And so I have little tricks where I will reach for, my water and just kind of reset, right? But the other thing that is very helpful in those very same meetings, it's very helpful for a supervisor to then go back and email a recap, right? Always make sure that you provide a deadline for the employee for whatever their task or they need to do. Because here's the thing. Sometimes if you have time blindness without a deadline, then it just happens when it happens. I also don't believe in this statement of you need to work more on your weaknesses. I think we all have weaknesses. And I do believe that there should be a baseline of understanding and competency. But I think that it is a huge waste of time, particularly if you staff your department such that you have the strengths that you need in every area. A huge waste of time to have someone try to make their weaknesses their superpower, rather than allow them just to use what they're great at to do the task associated with their greatness. I don't think that that's an efficient use of time at all.
I agree with you. Focus more on strengths versus the gaps, because the strengths it's what come natural for individuals. Yeah, I agree with you. So recapping meetings, stating to what you believe they said, to make sure you understood what they said, to bring clarity. set deadlines, and
Mhm.
focusing on strength. Those are very practical, easy,
Yeah,
best practices.
absolutely.
Wow. So let's shift to menopause. So I'm having a hot flash right now. So, why is this still one of the least discussed workplace topics despite the impacts on so many women?
Well, I think for a couple of things. When we started this podcast earlier, I talked about how we fought so for equality, right? But you know
Yeah.
how sometimes you run out there and you champion for something and not thinking all the way through,
Right.
right? And so we should have probably also kept into, what this looks like. I do believe that it's a medical condition that can affect you by any other medical
Yeah.
condition that you have and should be acknowledged in the ADA process. For the
Mhm.
ADA process, you just need something that affects your everyday life with eating, sleeping, seeing, walking,
Right.
talking. It does all of those,
It
from the brain
does.
fog, from the insomnia to you name it, right?
Mhm.
But again, I also believe that we as employees also share a responsibility. So
Mhm.
I also think it's on us, and I'm a huge advocate of getting your levels checked, figuring out
Right.
where you are as a woman, and then doing the things that are going to help
Mhm.
improve your health, even though we're going through this natural process.
Right.
But
Right.
it can be rough. I have got to that stage now. Now, why not walk into this room?
Look, why I walk into the room and why my baby finger hurt? Well, what's going on? Why my elbow hurt? Why my shoulder hurt? Oh,
Frozen shoulder, right?
and
Or
yeah,
I have walked up and down the hallway. Who is smoking in the house?
right. You smell smoke. It really messes with. I said no wonder my mother them they didn't know how to explain it, but I remember them saying when women were going through the change
Change, yes.
that they can go crazy, like they can
Yes.
lose their mind. And I didn't understand why. Now I understand why. I was like, it is challenging.
Yeah. I
And
remember my
uh,
grandmother saying that
but
she felt like she was just about to lose her. She said, I just
yeah,
felt like I was just going to lose my mind. Yeah,
yeah,
I get it. I get
yeah.
it.
And then you want to pull your skin off someday. You like it's just you weird, itchy feel. It's just
Yes.
strange.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I
how
don't
do
know.
you
I am a huge believer in God and I have a huge faith, but I just like I'm not rushing to get to heaven. But when I
right,
get there, I got some questions.
right. Yes, it kind of feels like we got well, he did it because we could carry it.
Yeah.
He didn't give
Yeah.
us nothing that we could not bear.
Exactly.
So, how do you believe menopause can affect confidence, energy, focus,
Mhm.
career decisions,
Mhm.
particularly for women in leadership roles?
Yeah. So I think one, I told you I was late diagnosed in terms of neurodivergency.
Mhm,
And two of my big things that I'm always practicing and getting better about are the symptoms that I experience from ADHD,
mhm,
as well as executive functioning issues. But with that, I will say that as you go through menopause, estrogen is really important in terms of executive function and the symptoms that you experience with ADHD.
mhm,
And so I think that in terms of affecting, if you're going through it, then you've got to work and focus and concentrate that much harder in
mhm,
terms of making sure that you're on task. And it can be hard. You've got
yeah,
to develop some systems, right? And then you've got to also make sure that you're pouring into yourself to make sure that you're able
right,
to be the best version of yourself.
right. That's
Yeah,
so
but it's no easy feat. That is
mhm,
absolutely sure.
right. That's so true. Do you believe that we probably should, as women, as a society, really redefine what success really looks like? Because we've defined it for so long, trying to break the glass ceiling, get to the next big title. But that may not necessarily be true today, to the point we were talking about earlier, and all the hidden costs associated with that and the
Mhm.
sacrifices that are being made. And to the point you made earlier, do the ends justify the means? I'm working to pay for daycare.
Yes.
What's
Mhm.
the purpose? What are your thoughts around that?
I think absolutely collectively that we need to change what success looks like. You mentioned earlier about the younger generation and
Mm-hmm.
choosing traveling over having families. I
Yeah.
think individually, many people, and I am also in that
Mm-hmm.
number as well, have changed and the idea of what success looks like,
Mm-hmm.
right? I don't know that we will ever get there collectively because it intimidates and it challenges this
Mm-hmm.
the capitalism, the other C word.
Yeah.
Right? And so there is always an interest in keeping that going. So what I would say to anyone who's listening to this is just define it for yourself, right?
Mhm.
And know and understand that those that are close to you, mother, father, uncle, cousin, may not understand it, but you have to do it in spite of. And I
Yeah.
say that from a personal place of, how I've done entrepreneurship and some other
Mhm.
things. And I can see the difference, particularly when I'm having a conversation with my parents, and there's this beaming of, oh, that's a great government job. And I mean, there's no gold watch at the end of this.
Right. Right.
And what I would say is, particularly if you are raising children, the days are long, but the years are short. And
Mhm.
so I don't ever want to say at the end of this
Right.
that I have pursued the gold watch that is an illusion and somehow lost one of my kiddos to
Mhm.
whatever, the wrong
Right.
crowd,
Right.
not finishing school, whatever that looks like,
Yeah.
right? And so I have now figured out how to continue, because I've been here and left it and came back, but
Right.
I have to continue on my mantra.
Mhm.
And that's how you define success for yourself. What is your mantra? But my
Right.
mantra has always been it is God first, these
Mhm.
kids, and then everything else.
Right. Right. And I think you need to put yourself in there, God first, then you, because if you're not healthy,
Yeah.
then you can't take care of your kids. The other thought I had was to the point you're making, you have to define it for yourself,
Yeah.
success.
Mm-hmm.
And as I've aged, it has changed drastically for me.
Yeah.
And what I've come to realize is I was like, okay, what do I want to be remembered for?
Mm-hmm.
And what do I want them saying about me when my assignment is done on earth? And I
Mm-hmm.
was like, I don't want nobody standing up there saying, oh, Rhoda was the best HR executive I've ever met. That's not what I want people to remember. If that's all they remember, then I have failed. So that question
Uh-huh.
inspired me to do stuff outside of work, like what I'm
Mm-hmm.
doing now with the podcast,
Mm-hmm.
writing books,
Mm-hmm.
speaking, being part of mentoring programs,
Mm-hmm.
networking with other women. Shannon and I doing the Women Unite tonight. Like I was like, there's got to be more than life than a 9-to-5 job. Like,
Yes.
I do not
Yes.
believe. So to the point you made, we must define our own what success looks like for us individually. But the key is we must define it, because what I believe has happened when we were growing up, we thought it was one thing that society showed us, and then that's what we aspired to do.
Mm-hmm. Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. You are
Yeah.
spot on about that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
Leslie, if you could design the workplace for the future,
Mm-hmm.
what would be different?
Ooh, based on my brain,
Yeah.
I would say no meetings ever on Mondays and Fridays,
Mm-hmm.
a 6-hour workday,
Yes.
the ability to work remotely if your type of, now you can't be no bus driver talking about some let me work remotely.
Right.
But but if your work allows for it,
Yes.
absolutely. And then and at least once a week, to set aside a couple hours during that week to just sit and think.
Right. Like build-in thinking time.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we know we are human
Mhm.
beings, not
Yeah.
human doings.
Yes, that's so true. And I would add a mental health or mental wellness time built in. Like maybe you get a mental wellness, a mental health day every quarter or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and just and to change the stigma around time off and PTO. I
Yes.
can remember, some of the more seasoned generations. I've got 345 vacation hours. Well, why?
Oh man, I used to work at St. Louis University,
Okay.
and my husband did too. And we used to get a lot of vacation time, and people just were so proud they saved up. I was taking my vacation time. They would
Yes.
save up their vacation time, and then if they left the company, they would pay them out for all their vacation. Baby, they changed that.
Uh-huh.
They said the maximum you can get, they didn't care how much you saved up. If you resign, the maximum you can get is 1 week.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
were trying to encourage people to take their time.
Yes, absolutely. It's funny. I don't know if it was a stand-up comedian or where I saw this
Mhm.
at, but he was talking about the difference between outgoing voicemail in the US and every
Uh-huh.
other countries. And so it was like, hi, this is Leslie. I am out of the office for open heart surgery today. If you
Right.
really need me, here's my phone number, but I
Right.
will be back tomorrow, right? And then you've got other organizations
Yeah.
outside the US where it's like, I'm on holiday again. I'll see you in 4 weeks. Enjoy.
Yeah. So I work I worked for a Dutch-owned company at one point, and here in St. Louis was where I was based. Our Dutch colleagues took the month of August off,
Mm.
and it was like a countrywide thing. It was like a sabbatical.
Uh-huh.
And we were still working, but we couldn't interact with them because they were off for a month.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I like it though.
I do too.
We need to rewrite all the
Yeah,
policy
we need to
handbooks.
rewrite this future workplace. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to move to rapid fire as we close out. And I just want you to say what comes to mind.
Okay.
One word that describes this season of your life.
Rebuilding.
Rebuilding.
Mm-hmm.
A workplace practice that needs to disappear.
2-hour meetings.
Oh, yes, I agree with you. Shouldn't be allowed. Shouldn't be allowed.
No.
A workplace practice every organization should adopt.
A Zen room.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
Off music, soft lighting, maybe yoga over lunch.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
One thing women need to stop apologizing for.
Everything.
Yeah.
We are not sorry people.
Mm-mm.
We make mistakes, we apologize, and we correct, but we are not sorry people.
And then one thing leaders need to start talking about.
I think leaders need to listen more.
I do too.
Yeah, I think that's the issue. They are talking at us instead of listening.
Yeah, they should ask more questions and then listen. I agree. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Leslie, I love your energy.
Thank you.
I love your mind. So it's so fun to hear the ideas you had. Thank you so much for such an honest and thought-provoking conversation. I really appreciate it. One of the things that stood out to me today is that many of the challenges women face at work, they aren't always visible.
Mm-hmm.
And they're often carried quietly in the background. We're usually suffering in silence while still showing up, delivering results, leading teams, raising families, and supporting others. So today's conversation for our listeners reminds us that creating healthier workplaces isn't about lowering standards. It's about creating environments where people can thrive without having to hide who they are or sacrifice their well-being in the process. So whether you're a leader, a parent, an HR professional, or someone navigating your own career journey, I hope this discussion encourages you to think differently about success, support, inclusion, and what it truly means to build workplaces that work for people. So to connect with Leslie and learn more about her work in leadership, what can they do, Leslie?
I'm on LinkedIn, Leslie T. Tolliver. You can also email me at thephoenixgroupstl@outlook.com, or you can send me a text or give me a call, 314-556-3747.
And Leslie, if a woman is listening and they wanted to come experience the fun we have at the networking breakfast sessions, when are those?
Winning Women's Collective Networking Breakfast is the fourth Thursday of every month. It is 7:30 to 9 a.m. and is held at the same location, which is the Shack Breakfast and Lunch Restaurant in Frontenac. The address is 731 South Lindbergh, Frontenac, Missouri.
Yes. And to everyone listening, the most important conversations are often the ones we've avoided the longest. So when we bring those conversations into the light, we create the possibility for understanding growth and change. Absolutely. So thank you for joining Leslie again. And thank you everyone for listening to another episode of Breakthrough Conversations with Rhoda and Company. Until next time, keep growing, keep questioning, and keep creating your breakthrough.
Hey, what's your secret? You got the kind of vibe that leaves me speechless. It could be model multitasking genius. Yeah, you got it all. Hey, what's your story? A kick-ass mom and 40 under 40. A soccer practice in your high heel glory. Yeah, you do it all.